The morning sun was just beginning to warm up the streets when Jasmine Carter pulled into the parking lot of her auto repair shop. Well, technically it was her shop, though the manager and employees inside had no idea who she really was. Jasmine had built Carter Automotive Group from the ground up, turning her late father's single garage into a chain of 13 successful auto shops across 3 states. But success had a funny way of creating distance between her and the day-to-day operations, and that's exactly what worried her today. She turned off the engine of her Honda Civic and sat there for a moment just looking at the building. The sign above the entrance gleamed in the sunlight, displaying the company name her father had dreamed of seeing on multiple locations. He'd passed away 5 years ago, never getting to see how big the business had grown. Sometimes Jasmine wondered if he'd be proud, or if he'd worry that growth had come at the cost of the values he'd taught her. That's why she was here, dressed in plain jeans and a simple black blazer, driving a car that had seen better days. No flashy jewelry, no expensive handbag, nothing that screamed CEO. She wanted to see what regular customers experienced when they walked through those doors. The corporate reports and customer surveys only told part of the story. She needed to see the truth with her own eyes. The parking lot was already half full, mostly with luxury cars, BMWs, Mercedes, even a Porsche parked near the entrance. Her Honda looked completely out of place among them, which was exactly the point. This particular location was in an upscale suburb, one of the newer additions to her chain. The numbers looked good on paper, but lately, something had been bothering her about this place. Jasmine grabbed her purse and stepped out of the car. The air smelled like motor oil and fresh coffee, a combination that always reminded her of Saturday mornings spent in her father's garage as a kid. He'd let her hand him tools while he worked, teaching her everything about cars and even more about treating people right. A person's car might be old, might be falling apart, he used to say, but it's getting them to work, getting their kids to school. You treat that car and that customer with respect. She walked toward the entrance, her sneakers quiet on the pavement. Through the large glass windows, she could see the waiting area bustling with activity. Customers sat in comfortable chairs, some flipping through magazines, others scrolling through their phones. Behind the service counter, she spotted Derek Thompson, the manager who'd been hired 3 months ago. His resume had been impressive: 15 years of experience in auto service management, great references, all the right qualifications on paper. The bell above the door chimed as Jasmine entered. The waiting area was nicer than she remembered from the plans. Leather chairs, a coffee station with fancy machines, even a TV playing the morning news on mute. Derek had clearly spent money on making the place look upscale, but looking fancy and treating people right were 2 different things, as her father used to remind her. She joined the line behind 3 other customers. Derek was behind the counter talking to a woman in a business suit about her Mercedes. His voice was smooth, almost too friendly, laughing at something the woman said. Jasmine watched him work, noting how he maintained eye contact, how he nodded enthusiastically, how he seemed genuinely interested in helping. The line moved slowly. Derek took his time with each customer, at least with some of them. When an older gentleman in work clothes approached the counter asking about a truck repair, Derek's entire demeanor shifted. His smile became tight, his responses brief and dismissive. He quoted a price that made the old man's eyes widen, and within 2 minutes the customer was walking out the door, shaking his head. Jasmine felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. She needed to see more before jumping to conclusions. Maybe it was just a bad moment, maybe the quote was legitimate. She wanted to believe the best about her employees. Finally, it was her turn. She stepped up to the counter with a friendly smile. Derek was typing something on his computer and he barely glanced up when she approached. "Help you?" he said, his eyes still on the screen. "Hi, yes," Jasmine said, keeping her voice pleasant and casual. "My car's been making this weird grinding noise when I brake. I was hoping someone could take a look at it today." Derek's eyes flicked up from the computer, scanning her quickly from head to toe. His gaze lingered on her simple clothes, then shifted toward the parking lot, probably spotting her old Honda through the window. Something changed in his expression, something Jasmine had seen before in her life but never expected to see in her own business. "We're fully booked," Derek said flatly, returning his attention to the computer screen. "Next available appointment is 2 weeks out." Jasmine glanced toward the service bays visible through the window behind him. She could see at least 3 empty bays. Mechanics standing around chatting, clearly not overwhelmed with work. 2 weeks? She asked, keeping her tone light. Your website said you offer same-day service for most repairs. Derek's expression hardened slightly. The website is general information. We prioritize our regular clients and high-end vehicle maintenance. For a brake issue on a... He paused, looking past her toward her car again. On an older model vehicle, you might want to try the shop over on Mitchell Street. They handle more basic repairs. The words hit Jasmine like a slap, but she'd trained herself over years in business to never show emotion when it mattered most. She smiled politely. I see. It's just that I drove 30 minutes to get here, and those empty bays suggest you might have some availability. Those bays are reserved, Derek said, his voice taking on an edge of irritation. Look, I'm trying to help you out here. This shop caters to a certain clientele, and we focus on maintaining relationships with customers who value premium service. I'm sure you understand. Oh, Jasmine understood perfectly. She understood that this manager she'd trusted to run her business, was judging customers based on their appearance and their cars. She understood that he was turning away people who needed help, people her father would have welcomed with open arms. She understood that everything her company stood for was being violated right in front of her, but she wasn't ready to reveal herself yet. Not until she saw the full picture. Could I at least speak with the owner? Jasmine asked, curious to hear his response. Derek actually laughed, a short, dismissive sound. The owner doesn't handle walk-in complaints. She's got 13 locations to worry about, not individual customer issues. Now, if you don't mind, I have actual appointments to manage. Just then, the door chimed again. A couple walked in, both dressed in expensive business attire, the man jingling keys to what looked like a new Audi. Derek's face transformed instantly, breaking into a wide smile. Good morning. Welcome to Carter Automotive. I'll be right with you, folks. He turned back to Jasmine with an expression that made it clear their conversation was over. Try Mitchell Street, he repeated, then brushed past her to greet the new arrivals. Jasmine stepped aside, her heart pounding with a mixture of anger and disappointment. She walked slowly toward the waiting area, her mind racing. She'd seen enough to confirm her worst fears, but she needed to understand the full scope of what was happening here. She chose a seat in the corner where she could observe everything without being too obvious. Pulling out her phone, she pretended to scroll through social media while actually opening her secure company dashboard. Time to do some digging and see just how deep this problem really went. Jasmine sat in the corner of the waiting area, her phone in her hands, but her eyes were everywhere else. She watched Derek work the room like a politician at a fundraiser, all smiles and handshakes for some customers, cold shoulders and quick dismissals for others. The pattern was becoming painfully clear, and it made her stomach turn. The well-dressed couple who'd walked in after her were now at the counter, and Derek was treating them like royalty. Absolutely, we can get that taken care of right away, he was saying, his voice warm and accommodating. I'll have my best technician on it. Should be ready by this afternoon. The man mentioned something about a business meeting, and Derek laughed like they were old friends. Don't worry, we'll make sure you're not late. Let me personally walk your car back to the bay right now. Jasmine's fingers tightened around her phone. She glanced at the clock on the wall. She'd been sitting here for 20 minutes, and in that time she'd seen enough to make her blood boil. But she forced herself to stay calm, to keep watching, to gather evidence. Her father had taught her that anger without facts was just noise. Facts were power. She pulled up the internal customer management system on her phone, typing in the access codes that only corporate executives had. The screen loaded, showing her real-time data from this location. Average wait times, customer satisfaction scores, revenue numbers, all of it flowing across her screen. On the surface, everything looked fine. Good revenue, decent satisfaction scores, no major red flags. But Jasmine knew that numbers could lie if you didn't dig deeper. She navigated to the customer complaint section, specifically for this location. Her eyes narrowed as she scrolled through the entries. There were complaints here, quite a few actually, but almost all of them were marked as resolved or customer declined service. She clicked on a few to read the details. Customer was unreasonable about pricing. Customer's vehicle didn't meet our service standards. Customer chose to go elsewhere. The language was professional enough on the surface, but reading between the lines, Jasmine could see the pattern. One complaint particularly caught her attention. A woman named Patricia Johnson had written, "I called ahead and was told they could see me same day. When I arrived with my 10-year-old Camry, the manager said they were too busy, but I could see empty bays through the window. I felt very unwelcome. I've never experienced anything like this before at Carter Automotive locations. Very disappointed." Derek had responded, "Customer misunderstood our scheduling policy." "Issue resolved." Jasmine felt her jaw clench. That wasn't resolved. That was swept under the rug. She continued scrolling, finding more complaints with similar patterns. An elderly woman charged $300 for an oil change that should have cost $40. A young man told his repairs would take 3 weeks when the same service at other Carter locations typically took 3 days. All of these complaints had been handled by Derek, and all of them had been dismissed or minimized in the system. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Jasmine looked up. A young guy in mechanic's coveralls stood there, gesturing to the chair next to her. His name tag read Tommy. He looked tired, frustrated even, and there was something in his eyes that suggested he needed to sit down and breathe for a minute. "No. Go ahead," Jasmine said, sliding her phone into her pocket. Tommy dropped into the chair with a heavy sigh. He had grease stains on his hands and a worn look on his face that seemed too old for someone probably in his mid-20s. He stared straight ahead for a moment, then shook his head slowly. "Long day?" Jasmine asked casually. "Long 3 months," Tommy muttered, then seemed to catch himself. He glanced at her apologetically. "Sorry, shouldn't be complaining to customers." "I'm not a customer," Jasmine said with a slight smile. "Manager wouldn't see me. Said I should try somewhere else." Tommy's expression darkened. "Yeah, that's been happening a lot lately." He looked around to make sure Derek wasn't nearby, then lowered his voice. "I've been working for Carter Automotive for 3 years. Started at a different location. Transferred here when this place opened. It used to be good, you know. Company actually cares about doing right by people. But ever since the new manager came..." He trailed off, clearly unsure if he should continue. Jasmine could see the internal struggle on his face, the desire to vent warring with professional loyalty. "It's okay," Jasmine said gently. "I've heard good things about Carter Automotive. That's why I came here." "The company is good," Tommy said firmly. "The owner, Ms. Carter, she built this place on solid values. Her dad was a mechanic. Worked his whole life getting disrespected and treated badly just because of who he was. When she started this company, she made it clear. We treat every customer like family, every car like it matters. Because it does matter. A single mom's beat-up minivan getting her to work? That matters just as much as some rich guy's sports car." Jasmine felt her throat tighten at hearing her father's story, her values, repeated back to her by this young mechanic who actually understood what the company was supposed to be about. "So what changed?" she asked quietly. Tommy leaned back in his chair, his voice barely above a whisper. "Derek happened. First month he was cool, just learning the ropes. Second month he started making changes. Told us we needed to maximize revenue potential and focus on high-value clients. Started turning away customers with older cars, quoting crazy high prices to people he decided weren't worth our time. I've seen him be rude to people, dismissive. It's not right. Have you reported this to corporate?" Jasmine asked, though she already suspected the answer. "I tried," Tommy said, frustration clear in his voice. "Sent 3 emails to the regional manager. Derek somehow found out and called me into his office. Didn't fire me, but made it real clear that stirring up trouble wasn't good for my career. Said I misunderstood his customer service strategy. 2 other mechanics quit last month because they couldn't stand how he was running things. Good people. Been with the company for years." Jasmine absorbed this information, her anger growing but her outward expression remaining calm. "Why do you stay?" Tommy was quiet for a moment. "Because I believe in what this company's supposed to be. My mom's a single parent. Worked 3 jobs to raise me and my sister. She drove a car held together with duct tape and prayers. I remember how mechanics used to treat her, like she was dirt because she couldn't afford something fancy. When I got hired by Carter Automotive and learned about the company values, about Ms. Carter's dad and why she started this business, it meant something to me. I don't want to give up on that." Before Jasmine could respond, Derek's voice cut across the waiting area. "Tommy, break's over. I need you on Bay 3 right now." Tommy stood up quickly. "Sorry for unloading on you," he said to Jasmine. "Hope you find a good shop that treats you right." As he walked away, Jasmine watched him go, her mind made up. This wasn't just about Derek anymore. This was about every Tommy in her company. Every employee who believed in doing the right thing but felt powerless to stop what was wrong. This was about every customer who'd been turned away, overcharged, or made to feel less than welcome in a business built on the exact opposite principle. She pulled out her phone again and opened her email. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen as she typed a message to her head of security and her regional manager. Need immediate assistance at location 7. Do not alert the site manager. Arrive within the hour. Then she opened another screen, pulling up Derek's employment file. She read through his background check, his references, his performance reviews. On paper, everything looked perfect. Too perfect, actually. His references all came from shops in different states, places that would be difficult to verify thoroughly. His performance reviews were glowing, but now Jasmine noticed they were all self-reported metrics, numbers that could easily be manipulated if you knew what corporate was looking for. She made a note to have HR investigate his previous employment more thoroughly. If he'd been doing this here, had he done it elsewhere too? Movement near the entrance caught her eye. A young couple had just walked in, both Hispanic, dressed in casual clothes. The woman was visibly pregnant, one hand resting on her belly. They approached the counter where Derek was finishing up with another customer. Jasmine watched carefully as Derek turned to them. His smile faded the moment he saw them. The young couple stood at the counter, the pregnant woman's hand resting protectively on her belly, while her husband explained their situation to Derek. Jasmine couldn't hear everything from where she sat, but she caught enough words to understand. Their car was overheating, they'd called ahead, someone had told them to come right in. The husband seemed nervous, apologetic even, like he was already expecting to be turned away. Derek listened with his arms crossed, his expression blank. When the husband finished talking, Derek didn't even check the computer. We're booked solid for the next 3 weeks, he said, his voice flat and mechanical. I can put you on a waiting list, but honestly, for an overheating issue, you're probably looking at expensive repairs. Might not be worth it depending on what you're driving. The woman's face fell. But we called 2 hours ago, she said softly. The person on the phone said same-day service was available. We drove all the way from Riverside, Derek shrugged. Phone staff sometimes makes mistakes. They don't understand our actual capacity. He glanced past them toward the parking lot, clearly trying to see their vehicle. What are you driving? A 2008 Honda Accord, the husband said. It's been good to us, but lately... Yeah, 2008, Derek interrupted, nodding like that explained everything. Those models can be tricky. Like I said, 3 weeks minimum, and the diagnostic alone will run you $200, plus parts and labor. You're probably looking at $1,500, maybe $2,000 total. Honestly, you might want to consider whether it's worth putting that money into an older vehicle. Jasmine's hands balled into fists in her lap. A standard diagnostic at Carter Automotive was $75. Overheating issues on a 2008 Accord were usually a thermostat or water pump. Repairs that typically cost between $300 and $500. Not $2,000. The couple exchanged worried glances. The woman looked like she might cry. We need our car, she said quietly. I have doctor appointments and he needs to get to work. We can't wait 3 weeks. Not my problem, Derek said, though he dressed it up in slightly more professional language. I'm just telling you what's realistic. Try calling around to other shops. Maybe someone else has availability. His tone made it clear the conversation was over. The husband put his arm around his wife's shoulders and guided her toward the door. As they passed Jasmine's seat, she could hear the woman's whispered words. What are we going to do? Jasmine wanted to jump up right then and there, to tell them she'd personally make sure their car was fixed today, fixed right, and at a fair price. But she stayed seated. She needed to see the full picture of what Derek was doing. Intervening now would only show her one piece of his behavior. She needed to understand the entire operation. She pulled out her phone and quickly typed a note to herself with the couple's description and the time, evidence, documentation, everything her lawyers would need. The door chimed again. This time it was an elderly woman, probably in her 70s, moving slowly with a cane. She wore a simple floral dress and carried a worn purse. When she reached the counter, she set down a folder filled with papers, maintenance records by the look of it. Hello, dear, she said to Derek with a sweet smile. I'm having trouble with my car. The check engine light came on and it's making a funny sound. Derek barely glanced at her. Make and model? It's a 2012 Buick LaCrosse, the woman said, fumbling through her papers. I have all the maintenance records here. I'm very careful about keeping up with everything. My late husband always said, check engine light could be anything. Derek cut her off. We'd need to run a full diagnostic, then probably a complete system check. For a vehicle that age, you're looking at a minimum of $500 just to figure out what's wrong. The woman's smile faltered. $500 just to look at it? Diagnostic system analysis computer scan. Derek rattled off, sounding bored. Standard procedure for older vehicles with warning lights. Could be emissions, could be transmission, could be electrical. No way to know without the full workup. Jasmine felt sick. A basic OBD2 scanner reading cost nothing and took 5 minutes. Even a comprehensive diagnostic shouldn't cost more than $150. The elderly woman's hands trembled slightly as she closed her folder. That's quite expensive just for a diagnosis. Are you sure there's no other way? Ma'am, I don't make the prices, Derek said, impatience creeping into his voice. That's what it costs. If you can't afford our services, there are cheaper shops around, but you get what you pay for. We're a premium facility. The woman nodded slowly, her disappointment visible. I see. Thank you for your time. She turned and walked back toward the door, moving even slower than when she'd entered. The folder of maintenance records, decades of careful car ownership, hung uselessly in her hand. Jasmine's vision blurred with anger for a moment. She took a deep breath, forced herself to stay calm. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A text from her head of security. 20 minutes out. Good. She needed backup for what was about to happen. She opened her laptop, connected to the shop's internal security camera system using her executive access. She scrolled back through the day's footage, then the past week, then the past month. She watched Derek's interactions on fast forward, seeing the pattern repeat over and over. Warm and welcoming to expensive cars and well-dressed customers, cold and dismissive to everyone else. She saved clips, documenting everything. Then she pulled up the shop's financial records, comparing them to her other locations. This shop was making money, yes, but the customer retention rate was the lowest in the company. New customer acquisition had dropped by 40% in the past 2 months. The average ticket price was higher than other locations, but the number of tickets per day was significantly lower. Derek was charging premium prices but serving fewer people, turning away potential long-term customers in favor of short-term profit. She dug deeper into the accounting. There were irregularities there too, charges that seemed inflated, parts marked up beyond standard rates, labor hours that didn't match industry standards. She flagged several transactions for her audit team to investigate. If Derek was overcharging customers, where was that extra money going? Into the company's bottom line or somewhere else? A commotion near the service bay doors pulled her attention back to the present. Tommy was walking quickly toward Derek, his face flushed with frustration. They were too far away for Jasmine to hear, but their body language told a story. Tommy was gesturing emphatically toward a car in the bay, clearly upset about something. Derek's expression was hard, unyielding. He said something sharp, pointing his finger at Tommy's chest. Tommy stepped back, his hands up in a gesture of surrender, but the anger in his eyes was unmistakable. Derek turned and walked back toward his office, dismissing Tommy without another word. Tommy stood there for a moment, his shoulders slumped, then returned to the service bay. Jasmine made another note on her phone. She checked the time. Her security chief would be here in 10 minutes. The regional manager was probably 15 minutes behind. She needed to prepare for what came next. Standing up, Jasmine straightened her blazer and walked slowly around the waiting area, observing every detail. The expensive coffee machine that probably cost more than a month's salary for the mechanics. The leather chairs that looked nice but prioritized style over comfort. The TV playing financial news instead of something more universally accessible. Even the magazines on the table were all luxury lifestyle publications, nothing for the average person. Derek had transformed this place into exactly what her father had fought against his entire life. A shop that judged people by their wealth instead of their needs. She noticed a bulletin board on the wall, something corporate required at every location. It displayed the company mission statement, the one she'd written herself after her father passed away. Carter Automotive, where every customer matters. Every vehicle counts and respect is our foundation. The words seemed to mock her from the wall. How many customers had stood in this very spot, reading those words while being treated with anything but respect? Her phone buzzed again. Security was 5 minutes out. Jasmine walked back to the service counter. Derek was there, typing on his computer, probably entering inflated quotes into the system. A man in an expensive suit was standing beside him, discussing his BMW's maintenance schedule like they were old friends. She stood to the side, waiting patiently. The man finished his conversation, shook Derek's hand like they'd just concluded a business deal, and walked away satisfied. Derek turned back to his computer, still not acknowledging Jasmine. "Excuse me," Jasmine said, her voice calm but clear. Derek looked up with barely concealed annoyance. "I thought I told you we couldn't help you today." "I know what you said," Jasmine replied. "But I need some information for my records. Could you tell me your full name and employee ID number?" Derek's eyes narrowed. "Why would you need that?" "For documentation purposes," Jasmine said simply. Derek stared at Jasmine with growing suspicion. Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "Documentation purposes? Look, lady, I don't know what you're trying to pull here, but I don't have time for this. I already told you we can't service your vehicle today." "I understand that's what you said," Jasmine replied, her voice steady and professional. "But I'd still like your full name and employee identification number. It's a simple request." The waiting area had gone quiet. Other customers were glancing over, sensing tension in the air. Tommy had emerged from the service bay and stood in the doorway, watching the exchange with wide eyes. Derek's jaw tightened. "Derek Thompson. Employee ID 7842. Happy now? Is there anything else, or can I get back to running this business?" "Running this business," Jasmine repeated softly. "That's interesting phrasing. Tell me, Derek, when you were hired 3 months ago, did you receive training on company policies and values?" "Of course I did," Derek snapped. "What is this about? Are you some kind of corporate spy or something? Because if you're trying to cause problems, I can have security escort you out." Jasmine almost smiled at that. "No need for security. In fact, my security team should be arriving any moment now. But while we wait, why don't you pull up the customer service protocols on your computer, specifically the section about discrimination and customer treatment?" The color started to drain from Derek's face. His hand moved to the computer mouse, but he didn't click anything. "I don't know what you think you saw, but I run this shop according to company standards. We maintain high service quality by being selective about—" "Selective?" Jasmine interrupted, taking a step closer to the counter. "That's an interesting word choice. Selective based on what criteria exactly? The type of car someone drives? The way they're dressed? Maybe the color of their skin?" "Now wait just a minute," Derek said, his voice rising. "I don't appreciate what you're implying. I've never discriminated against anyone. I make business decisions based on efficiency and profitability. That's my job." "Your job," Jasmine said, her voice dropping lower but somehow carrying more weight, "is to uphold the values of Carter Automotive. Your job is to treat every customer with respect and dignity, regardless of what they drive or how they look. Your job is to honor the legacy of a man who spent his entire life fighting against exactly the kind of treatment you've been dishing out all morning." Derek's face had gone from pale to red. "Who the hell do you think you are coming in here and—" "My name is Jasmine Carter," she said clearly, her voice cutting through his bluster like a knife. "I'm the CEO and owner of Carter Automotive Group. I own this shop and the 12 others across 3 states. And you, Derek Thompson, have been violating every single principle this company was built on." The silence that followed was deafening. Every head in the waiting area turned. Tommy's mouth fell open. A customer's magazine slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a slap that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. Derek's face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, disbelief, fear, and then a desperate attempt at damage control. "Miss Carter, I had no idea you were— If you'd just identified yourself, I would have—" "You would have what?" Jasmine asked, her voice sharp. "Treated me differently. That's exactly the problem, Derek. You shouldn't treat anyone differently based on who they are or what you think they can afford. Every person who walks through that door deserves the same respect, the same service, the same honesty." "I can explain," Derek stammered. "The business model I've been implementing is designed to maximize profits. We focus on high-value customers because you decided some customers are worth more than others," Jasmine finished. "Let me tell you what I've observed in the past 2 hours, Derek. I watched you turn away a young couple whose car was overheating, quoting them 3 weeks and prices that were triple our standard rates. I watched you try to charge an elderly woman $500 for a diagnostic that should cost a fraction of that. I watched you dismiss an older gentleman who needed help with his truck. And before all that, you refused to service my car because you decided I wasn't worth your time. Derek's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Sweat was forming on his forehead. But it gets worse, Jasmine continued, pulling out her phone. I've been reviewing the customer complaints for this location. You've been intercepting and dismissing legitimate concerns for months. You've been overcharging vulnerable customers. You've created a hostile work environment that's driven away good employees who understood what this company stands for. She pulled up her phone and showed him the screen, displaying the customer complaints and financial irregularities she'd documented. I have evidence of every overcharged customer, every person you turned away, every policy you violated. I have security footage from this morning. I have testimony from employees who tried to report your behavior but were silenced. Derek's face was now completely white. He gripped the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Miss Carter, please, I was just trying to improve the bottom line. The revenue numbers are up, the profit margins are built on discrimination and exploitation, Jasmine said coldly. You know what my father used to say, Derek? He said that money made by treating people wrong is blood money. It's dirty and it stains everything it touches. He built this company on the principle that every customer matters, that every vehicle counts, that respect is our foundation. You read those words every day on the wall behind you and you ignored them. I made some mistakes, Derek said, his voice desperate now. Oh, but I can fix this. Give me a chance to make it right. I'll change the way I do things. You'll do nothing, Jasmine said firmly. Because as of this moment, you no longer work for Carter Automotive. You're fired, Derek, effective immediately. The words hung in the air. Derek's face crumpled. You can't do this. I have rights. I have a contract, which includes a clause about upholding company values and policies, Jasmine said. A clause you violated repeatedly. My legal team will be in touch regarding the termination process and any potential investigations into the financial irregularities I've discovered. You'll receive your final paycheck according to state law, but your employment here ends right now. The door chimed, and two men in dark suits entered, both wearing security badges. Jasmine's head of security, Robert Chen, walked directly to her. Ms. Carter, he said with a nod. Robert, thank you for coming so quickly, Jasmine said. This is Derek Thompson. His employment has been terminated. Please escort him to his office to collect his personal belongings, then see him off the premises. Make sure all company property is returned, including keys, access cards, and computer passwords. Robert nodded professionally. Of course, Mr. Thompson, if you'll come with me. Derek looked around wildly as if searching for some way out, some miracle that would undo what had just happened. His eyes landed on the customers in the waiting area, some of whom were pulling out their phones, probably recording the whole scene. Then he looked at Tommy, who stood in the service bay doorway with his arms crossed, no sympathy in his expression. This isn't fair, Derek said, his voice breaking. I was doing my job. You were betraying everything this company stands for, Jasmine said. And in doing so, you hurt people. People who needed help. People who trusted the Carter Automotive name. That's not just a business failure, Derek. That's a moral failure. Robert stepped forward, his presence making it clear that the conversation was over. Mr. Thompson, please come with me. We can do this the easy way or the difficult way. Derek's shoulders sagged in defeat. He looked at Jasmine one more time, perhaps hoping to see some hint of mercy, but her expression was unyielding. Finally, he stepped out from behind the counter and followed Robert toward the office, the second security guard trailing behind them. As they disappeared into the back, the waiting area erupted. Customers started talking all at once, some on their phones, some talking to each other. Jasmine heard fragments of conversation. Did that really just happen? She's the owner? I knew something was wrong with this place. Tommy walked over slowly, his eyes wide with amazement and something that looked like hope. Ms. Carter? I'm Tommy Rodriguez. I'm the one who tried to report the problems to corporate, Jasmine finished. Yes, I saw your emails, Tommy. I'm sorry they didn't reach me sooner. That's going to change. We're implementing a direct reporting system so this never happens again. Tommy's eyes got watery. I thought I was going crazy. I thought maybe I was wrong about what the company stood for. You weren't wrong, Jasmine said firmly. Jasmine turned to face the waiting area, looking at every customer, every employee who had gathered to witness what just happened. Some looked shocked, others confused, and a few seemed to understand that something significant had just taken place. She took a deep breath, knowing that what she said next would set the tone for everything that followed. "I want to apologize to everyone here," she began, her voice strong but sincere. "My name is Jasmine Carter and I own this company. What you witnessed today, what some of you experienced today, is not what Carter Automotive stands for. It's not what my father built this company to be." She paused, gathering her thoughts, feeling the weight of her father's legacy on her shoulders. "My father was a mechanic. A good one. He spent 40 years fixing cars, but he spent those same 40 years being treated like he didn't matter. Shop owners judged him by how he looked, not by his skills. Customers saw his skin color before they saw his talent. He was turned away from jobs, underpaid for his work, and disrespected in ways that no one should ever have to endure." The waiting area was completely silent now. Even the mechanics who had gathered in the service bay doorway stood still, listening. "When I started this company 15 years ago with the single garage my father left me, I made him a promise," Jasmine continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I promised that every shop bearing the Carter name would treat people the way he deserved to be treated. With respect, with dignity, with the understanding that a person's car, no matter how old or worn, is carrying them to important places, getting them to work, taking them to the hospital, bringing their kids home from school. Every car matters because every person matters." She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as she could. What happened here today violated that promise. The manager I trusted betrayed the values I built this company on. He turned away people who needed help. He overcharged vulnerable customers. He created an environment where good employees were afraid to speak up. And for that, I am deeply sorry. A woman in the waiting area, one of the customers who'd been there all morning, spoke up. "Is it true what he was doing? The discrimination?" Jasmine nodded. "Yes, I witnessed it myself this morning, which is why I was here. I've been reviewing complaints and data that suggested problems at this location. I needed to see it with my own eyes before taking action. What I saw confirmed my worst fears." "What happens now?" another customer asked. "Now we fix it," Jasmine said firmly, "starting immediately. Every customer who was overcharged will be contacted and refunded. Every customer who was turned away will be called back and offered priority service. We're implementing new oversight systems to make sure nothing like this ever happens again at any of our locations." She turned to Tommy, who still stood nearby looking somewhat overwhelmed. "Tommy Rodriguez, I've been watching you today. I saw you stand up for what's right even when it was difficult. I saw you treat customers with respect when your manager didn't. I read your emails trying to report problems to corporate. You embody everything this company is supposed to be." Tommy's eyes widened. "Ms. Carter, I was just—" "You were doing the right thing," Jasmine interrupted. "Which is why I'm promoting you to manager of this location, effective immediately." The waiting area burst into spontaneous applause. Tommy's mouth fell open, and for a moment he seemed unable to speak. "Ms. Carter, I don't know what to say. I've only been a mechanic for 3 years. I don't have management experience." "You have something more important than experience," Jasmine said. "You have integrity. You understand what this company stands for. The rest we can teach you. My regional manager will be here within the hour to help you transition into the role. We'll provide training, support, whatever you need. But I believe you're the right person for this job." Tommy wiped his eyes quickly, trying to compose himself. "Thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Jasmine said with a smile. Then she turned back to the waiting area. "For anyone who came in today and was turned away or given unfair quotes, please come back to the counter. We're going to take care of you right now. Same-day service, fair prices, and the respect you deserved in the first place." People started moving toward the counter, including a few who had left earlier, and apparently heard the commotion and come back. Jasmine worked alongside Tommy and the other mechanics, personally reviewing each case, calling customers who'd left to invite them back, correcting the inflated quotes Derek had given. The elderly woman with the Buick was one of the first she called. "Mrs. Patterson? This is Jasmine Carter from Carter Automotive. I understand you were in this morning about a check engine light." "Yes, ma'am. I'm calling to apologize for how you were treated and to invite you to bring your car back immediately. We'll run a full diagnostic at no charge, and any repairs will be done at fair market rates." "No, ma'am, I'm serious. This is my company, and I promise you'll be treated with the respect you deserve." One by one, she made similar calls. the young pregnant woman and her husband, the older gentleman with the truck, Patricia Johnson, whose complaint she'd read in the system. Each conversation was an apology, an invitation, and a promise to do better. By mid-afternoon, the shop was bustling with activity. The service bays that had been empty that morning were now filled with cars. Mechanics worked efficiently, and Tommy moved between them, coordinating the work with a natural leadership style that proved Jasmine's instinct right. The regional manager, David Patel, arrived around 2 o'clock. Jasmine briefed him on everything that had happened, showing him the documentation she'd gathered. His face grew more serious with each piece of evidence. "This is worse than we thought," David said quietly. "If he was doing this here, we need to audit every location he's ever worked at." "Already on it," Jasmine said. "I've got the HR team investigating his employment history. I want to know if there were warning signs we missed, if other companies had problems with him, everything. We failed to catch this, David. That's on us." "What about the other employees here?" David asked. "Do we know if anyone else was involved?" "Tommy says the other mechanics hated what Derek was doing but felt powerless to stop it," Jasmine said. "I'll interview each of them personally, but my instinct is that this was Derek's operation. He created a culture of fear that kept people quiet." She looked out at the shop floor, watching Tommy help an elderly customer understand her repair options, taking time to explain everything in plain language. "We're going to turn this around, David. This location is going to become an example of what Carter Automotive should be. But we're also going to use this as a wake-up call for the whole company. If it happened here, there might be cracks in other locations too." Over the next few weeks, the transformation was remarkable. Tommy proved to be an excellent manager, leading with empathy and fairness. The mechanics who had been demoralized under Derek's leadership found their passion for the work again. 2 of the technicians who had quit came back, hearing about the changes and wanting to be part of the new culture. Customer reviews shifted dramatically. The complaints stopped. The praise started pouring in. People wrote about Tommy by name, about how he took time to explain repairs, how he never made them feel stupid for asking questions, how he treated their old cars with the same care he gave to luxury vehicles. Jasmine made the location a priority, visiting weekly for the first month, then bi-weekly after that. She used what happened as a teaching moment for her entire organization, implementing new training programs on unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and the company's core values. She created a direct hotline for employees to report concerns without fear of retaliation, one that came straight to corporate with multiple people monitoring it. She also reached out personally to every customer who had been mistreated, not just with refunds but with handwritten apology letters. Many of them came back, willing to give Carter Automotive another chance. Some even became the shop's most loyal customers, telling their friends and family about the company that owned up to its mistakes and made things right. 3 months after firing Derek, Jasmine stood in the waiting area of the same location, watching the operation during the busy Saturday morning rush. Every service bay was full. The waiting area was packed with customers, but unlike the day she'd walked in unannounced, these customers were smiling, chatting with the staff, comfortable and welcomed. Tommy emerged from the service bay, grease on his hands, talking to a customer about their car. "So the good news is it's just the alternator, not the whole electrical system like you feared. We can have it fixed today and the cost will be about $300 with parts and labor. I can show you the old alternator when we're done if you want to see what was wrong with it." The customer, a young woman with 2 kids in tow, looked relieved. "That's so much better than I thought. Thank you for explaining everything so clearly." "That's what we're here for," Tommy said with a genuine smile. "And hey kids, you want to see the garage while you wait? We've got a classic Mustang in Bay 4 that's pretty cool." The kids' eyes lit up and the mother laughed. They'd love that. Jasmine watched the interaction with a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time. This was what her father had envisioned. This was what the company was meant to be. Her phone buzzed with a message from her CFO. The quarterly numbers were in. Despite the immediate revenue dip from correcting Derek's overcharges and refunding customers, the location was already trending upward. Customer retention was up 60%. New customer acquisition had tripled. Word of mouth was bringing in people from surrounding areas who'd heard about the shop that actually cared. But more important than the numbers were the stories. The single mom who cried when Tommy helped her fix her car for half what other shops had quoted. The elderly couple who brought cookies for the staff because they felt like family. The college student who got a fair deal on brake repairs and now recommended Carter Automotive to everyone in his dorm. These were the metrics that really mattered. These were the measures of success her father would have cared about. Tommy walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. "Miss Carter, I didn't know you were here." "Just checking in," Jasmine said. "Looks like you've got things well in hand." Tommy grinned. "I love this job. Every day I get to help people, work with a great team, and know I'm doing something that matters. Still can't believe you gave me this chance." "You earned it," Jasmine said, "and you've proven every day since that I made the right choice." She looked around the shop one more time, at the diverse group of customers being served with equal respect, at the mechanics working efficiently and happily, at the mission statement on the wall that finally meant something again. Her father would have been proud, not just of the business success, but of the choice to do what was right even when it was hard, to uphold values even when it cost something. As Jasmine walked back to her car, she thought about that morning 3 months ago when she'd been turned away at her own shop. It had been one of the most painful experiences of her professional life, seeing everything her father built being betrayed. But it had also been necessary. Sometimes you have to see the worst to fix it, to make sure it never happens again. She started her Honda Civic, the same car Derek had judged her for driving, and smiled. Some things were worth more than appearances. Some values were worth fighting for, and some promises, like the one she'd made to her father, were worth keeping no matter what the cost.